Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Naruto can use other people's memories. Sometimes a technique can lead to new discoveries, new paths. A chance discovery lets Naruto learn that which he was never taught, using the memories of others to aid his progress. Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video, and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 25, The Teams Assemble. Good luck, Tsunami said, giving Ino and her team a smile and small bow. Inari was less restrained and shook both Shikamaru and Koji's hands before hugging Ino. We'll be back to see you kicking ass in a month. He grinned up at her and Ino smiled despite herself. I'll look forwards to it. We have to go now, Tsunami said after a moment, and Inari sighed as he released Ino. Be good. Ino smiled. And remember those exercises. Inari nodded, then waved as 3 of the 6 Naruto clones who had been waiting nearby took position around him. A few seconds later, he and his mother vanished in flashes of golden light. Damn, missing him already, the annoying little brat. Ino muttered under her breath, then she inhaled deeply and squared her shoulders. All right. Let's get going. I agree. Shikamaru yawned as he ambled forwards. After all, you don't want to disappoint your toy boy. Yipe. Koji shook his head as Shikamaru sprinted off, showing far more energy than any other Nara, pursued hotly by a cursing Ino. Hey, guys! He shouted as he broke into a deceptively fast run. Wait for me. I'm here. Kiba shouted as he bounded onto the training field. Sorry, had to deal with a slight issue. Mom was trying to get me to tell her where I got the meat. Why did you not divulge that information? Shino asked, and Kiba smirked. Because the way I see it, I can get her to pay me to get more, then I can hire Naruto to get it. He gets paid, I get a slice of the cash and some of the meat, and Mom gets what she wants. Total win. Clever. Hinata said in approval. Are you ready? Let's kick ass. I believe myself to be suitably prepared for the task ahead of us. Then let's do this, Hinata stated, leading her team towards the distant academy. You know, Kiba mused, you're really starting to use more Narutoisms. I also have perceived the ongoing modification of your vocabulary. Hinata blushed as she tried to ignore the gentle teasing of her friends. Yosh. Let us show our flames of youth. Lee. Tenten growled, grabbing her teammate by the shoulder. Remember the plan. We pretend to be weak until we can see which of the other teams could be a threat to us. Remember that. Hi. Neji smirked slightly, then his face went blank as Tenten turned her glare onto him. I am not concerned, he stated. We are fated to win, it is our destiny. Unless we have to go up against Op Force on his own turf. Tenten pointed out, causing both boys to wince in memory. I have been studying the manual of traps, Neji admitted. For an Uchiha, Madara was indeed very inventive, a most unusual thing given the way the Uchiha operated back then. Tenten raised an eyebrow, and Neji took it as his cue to expand on his comment. Back in the clan war days, before Konohagakure was founded and showed the way for other hidden villages, the Uchiha and the Senju were often fighting each other. The Senju had a tendency to use unique jutsu which the Uchiha copied with their Sharingan and used against them. However, the ability to copy jutsu meant that very few of the Uchiha ever actually attempted to create new jutsu for their own use. Why should they expend all that effort when they could simply watch someone else? Madara was one of the very few who were known to actually innovate, which is why he was such a fearsome adversary. Unlike the majority of the Uchiha, he was not predictable. Tenten finally managed. Any idea where I can get a copy of that book from? I shall consult the clan archivist after the exam, Neji promised. Thanks, Neji. Sasuke. Sakura said in greeting. Sakura. Sasuke replied. The two genin nodded at each other, then a third voice shouted a name. Tobio. Both genin stared at their teammate, who shrugged. What? I was feeling left out. Sasuke rolled his eyes, then turned to look at the building they had gathered in front of. There seem to be quite a few teams here from other villages. He mused. I wonder how many of them have techniques I can copy. As long as you don't copy mine. Tobio shrugged. Or Sakura's. We've already discussed this. Sasuke pointed out. Anything I copy from you, I won't use without permission. Just checking. Tobio shrugged. After all, during that mission to Tanzuka quarters, you had to use the Oryakumph. That never happened. Sasuke growled and Tobio nodded. A moment passed, then Sasuke removed his hand from Tobio's mouth. Can we go in now? Sakura asked and both boys exchanged glances before nodding. Where is the exam? Room 301. Sakura said, checking the application form. There seems to be quite a queue forming on the main stairs, detour round. There's a second set of stairs around that way which cross-connects. She's the brains. Tobia agreed and Sasuke nodded slowly. Sakura, you have lead. Sakura glanced round to see if anyone was watching them before scurrying to the corner of the building. The door's locked. She reported, glancing round. I got this. Tobio smirked as he pulled out a roll of fabric and unrolled it to reveal odd-shaped bits of metal in small pockets. I learned how to pick locks back in the orphanage. The matron kept us on short rations to try and pocket extra money for herself. Rumor had it that she sold some of the kids to a secret organization to be brainwashed. Come to think of it, I never did find out what happened to Shin and his younger brother. Easy does it. According to the older kids, Naruto was once at the orphanage as well, but he was taken away after being locked outside one time too many, and then the matron, aha. The lock clicked and Tobio returned his tools to their pockets as Sasuke peeked through. Clear, but I don't remember this corridor. I do, it's one that's only used to get to the storerooms. Sakura supplied as she slipped past him. The stairs we want are this way. I wonder how the others are doing. Tobio mused. Damn morons. Suijutsu groused as he shoved his way through the crowd gathered outside the door, glancing up at the number. Get out of our way. Suijutsu. Haku said warningly and the white-haired Genin cringed. What a scaredy cat. One of the nearby Genin sneered. If you're the strongest that the hidden mist has, that civil war must have pretty much destroyed your forces. Means more missions for us. Yeah. Suijutsu half shouted. At least we of the mist don't get fooled by a half-assed genjutsu that changes a 2 into a 3. The mob of Genin went silent and Haku face-palmed. Damn it, Suijutsu. When will you learn to keep your mouth closed? Thanks, kid. The Kumo Genin sneered as he and his team headed towards the stairs. Keep it up and your own teammates will take you down to stop you from stabbing yourself in the foot like that. Suijutsu shuddered as he met Haku's gaze. Help. Haku, you can slap him down later. Kojiro said as he stepped up. Let's just get to the real exam room. Why would they even have a crappy illusion like that, anyway? Suijutsu asked as they joined the flow of Genin. So that those who don't know how to detect such things don't get to the proper exam, since they obviously aren't prepared. A voice said and Suijutsu looked round to see a boy with pineapple-style hair slouching along beside him, his arm mounted Hitai boasting the swirled leaf of Konoha. Oh. I didn't think of that. I think you could drop the last 2 words and it would be more accurate. Haku stated and Suijutsu winced. I'm going to be hearing about this for a long time, aren't I? Your teammates seem to be almost as troublesome as mine. The Konoha Genin sighed. Well, see you round. The boy dropped back and Suijutsu swallowed nervously as he saw Haku twirling an ice senbon between his fingers. I'm sorry. Over there. Sasuke stated and his team made their way through the milling Genin to where 2 other teams were standing in the corner. Hey, you made it. Kiba exclaimed. Great. It would have been troublesome if they hadn't. Shikamaru sighed as his shadow snapped out and snagged Ino before she could glump Sasuke. Thanks, Shika. Sasuke said as he stepped to one side, allowing a grinning Tobio to take his place. Ino stared in horror as Tobio spread his arms ready to hug her, then Shikamaru released his shadow hold and Ino stumbled forwards, unable to avoid crashing into Tobio. No 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 no, get off me. And there I was thinking I was finally getting a fangirl of my own. Tobio mourned as Ino wriggled free, then he ducked Ino's punch. Hey! Enough, Ino pig. Sakura said as she caught Ino's fist. Only I am allowed to hit him like that. Yeah, hey. You know, you are attracting attention. A new voice said, and Ino half turned to see an older teenaged boy with white hair and glasses smiling gently at them. You wouldn't want to make yourselves into targets before the exam starts, would you now? Who are you? Kiba asked, and the new arrival bowed slightly. Yakushi Kabuto, at your service. This is my 7th Genin exam. I've had a bit of a run of bad luck over the last few years. Sounds like it. Tobio agreed. So, any tips for us? Things not to do. Well, you've already attracted quite a bit of attention, Kabuto sighed, so how about I help you learn about your competition? I made a set of ninja info cards containing information about all the genin entering the exam. Are there any you want to learn about? The 9 genin exchanged glances, then Hinata blushed slightly. Uzumaki Naruto. Kabuto pulled a small deck of cards out of his tunic pocket and quickly riffled through them. I don't seem to have him, are you certain he's participating? He's an independent genin. Sasuke supplied. We've all gone up against him. Ah, you mean Op Force? Kabuto exclaimed, putting away his deck of cards and pulling out another one. Let me check my important shinobi deck, here we are. Uzumaki Op Force Naruto. Kabuto put the card down on the desk and everyone looked at it. Parents unknown, skills are taijutsu medium to high, ninjutsu high, genjutsu low, no known blood limit, and his weapons work is medium to high with an emphasis on traps. He has done 115 D ranks, 3 C ranks and 2 A rank missions. His primary techniques are the Kage Bunshin and the Hiration. Tobio whistled. Diam. Hey, what about Hinata here? He's engaged to her, right? Hinata nodded as Kabuto switched his cards and pulled one out. Hyuga Hinata, parents are Hyuga Hayashi and Hyuga Hitomi, deceased. My condolences. Team leader is Jonin Ui Kurenai, teammates are Abu Rameshino, Inyazuka Kiba, and his Ninken Akamaru. Skills are taijutsu medium to high, ninjutsu medium, genjutsu medium to high level of control over her blood limit of the Byakugan, and weapons work low to medium. I see that you've done a dozen D ranks, 2 C ranks and an A rank. Primary technique is a modified version of the Gyuken fighting style. Hinata nodded in confirmation. If we have time, Kabuto-san, can you tell us about the redhead over there? He has a great deal of chakra, more than most adults. Kabuto glanced at the indicated boy, then shuffled through his deck. Redhead from Suna, redhead from Suna, redhead fr aha. Here we are. Gaara of the Desert, the youngest member of the Desert siblings led by Jonin Baki. The other two are Kankuro and Tamari. I don't have that much data on him since he's from Suna and this is his first exam, but he's done 1 B rank mission and 8 C ranks. As the exams progress, I'll be able to update the card, but I have heard that he performed every single mission without getting a single scratch. He uses sand. Hinata supplied. I saw a layer of sand covering his entire body, infused with his chakra. I couldn't see below that. Sand armor. Shino mused. That would give him a considerable advantage under most circumstances. Logically, his weaknesses would be Raiden and Suten Jutsu. Kabuto put his cards away and looked round. I can see that there are representatives from almost every village here, even the new ones like. His comment was interrupted by a flash of golden light at the front of the room and everyone turned to see a tall man in a dark trench coat glaring at them from the front of a group of identically clad examiners. Settle down. He growled. Chapter 26, Test of a Genin. Naruto watched the screens along with the other invigilators, his attention on the corner where Hinata and the other members of the Rookie 9, as they were being called, had congregated. Naruto, clones. Ibiki commanded and Naruto glanced round. Including himself, there were an even dozen to be transported and he wasn't going to be part of a transport ring himself, meaning that all the clones were going to dissipate during the process. Teijokage Bunshin. The room almost seemed to shrink as the number of bodies in the room quadrupled, the newly created clones shifting around until they were all in position. "Wait for my mark and remember to jump in formation," Ibiki stated, his eyes fixed on the screens. On the screen, Naruto saw the silver-haired Genin who had been showing his friends something start to turn, then Ibiki nodded. "They're starting to get nervous, Hiration now." Naruto blinked as the world seemed to simply switch from the monitor room to the examination hall. Although his gaze was mostly blocked by virtue of being at the back of the group, there was nothing wrong with his hearing and he hid a smirk as Ibiki gave his first command. "Settle down." The noise in the room plummeted to near silence. "My name is Marino Ibiki. Some of you have already heard of me. None of you have ever met me professionally before today. If you had, you would not be here now." Naruto was astonished. The room had seemed to be quiet before, now it was almost singing with silence. Although he wasn't sure, he thought he could hear the heartbeat of the man beside him. "My assistants will tell you where to sit. You will go there without complaint and be seated. There will be no complaints or questions until I tell you otherwise." The group of invigilators split up and Naruto, remembering his special briefing by Ibiki, ghosted backwards until he was standing in the corner, his eyes darting around the hall until he spotted Hinata. His fiancée was looking slightly worried, but she was drawing on an inner reserve to maintain her composure as she sat at her designated desk. Ibiki waited motionless at the front of the stage, his lack of motion so pronounced that Naruto was wondering if he had somehow replaced himself with a statue, then he raised his head. "The first stage of the Chunin exams starts now," he said. "There is a test in front of you. If any of you have turned it over without instruction, you fail." No one moved and Ibiki nodded slowly. "Good. This test comprises of 10 questions. 9 of them are on the sheets in front of you, the 10th will be provided in 50 minutes time. This test lasts 1 hour and you will pass or fail as teams. Each team starts with 10 points, 2 points will be subtracted every time one of you is caught cheating. Lose all your points and you are out of the exam. Turn over your papers and begin." Naruto unsealed his clipboard from the one-use storage seal on his belt and pulled a pencil from his sleeve. For a long moment, he let his gaze rest on Hinata, who was bent over her desk and writing an answer to the first question, then he turned his attention to the rest of the candidates, looking for any sign of cheating that even a civilian wouldn't be expected to miss. Ibiki watched Naruto out of the corner of his eye as the young Genin's gaze swept over the examens. The son of the Yondaime was showing a surprising level of professionalism that Ibiki wouldn't have expected had he simply been going by the academy records. Although he had been looking at his fiancée for a while, it hadn't impacted appreciably with the performance of his duty, and as a former prankster, Naruto had a good idea of what to look out for. "Number 17. One of the examiners called out. "That was your 5th cheat, you and your team are out." "What?" The Genin in question screeched as she rose in her seat, her forehead glinting with the Hitayate of Kyuzagakur. "You can't be sorry." Her complaint was cut short by a trio of hunged Naruto clones looking just like Ibiki striding past him to surround her before all 4 vanished in a flash of light. Ibiki glanced at Naruto, whose fingers twitched in one of the variant codes. "Training Field 5. Ever Genin there. Hold until release." Although the syntax was slightly mangled, Ibiki had no trouble decoding it. "Numbers 114 and 72, you will make your way to Training Field 5 as that is where I sent your teammate," he said, taking the credit for Naruto's actions. "Anyone else want to make a complaint? If so, I will send them to wait under the gaze of Mariboshi Kasuke until their team collects them." The hall was totally silent and Ibiki gave a cruel smirk even as his hands, clasped behind his back, wriggled to send a message back to Naruto. "Well done, repeat if needed. Next new plan, warn me first." Naruto managed not to blush with embarrassment at Ibiki's gentle reproach, then he turned his gaze back to the Genin being tested. In another life, he might have been amongst them. Which would have sucked, considering how it was only due to Hinata that he could now read properly. "All right," Ibiki growled, looking out at the assembled Genin. Over the last 3/4 of an hour, their numbers had been winnowed by a full quarter, most of whom had chosen to leave quietly rather than have Ibiki transport them out. "It is time for the 10th question, so put your pencils down for now." Be aware, the rules have just changed. Fail to answer the 10th question correctly and not only will you be removed from this exam, you will be barred from taking the Genin exam ever again. The Genin stared at him, then several started to protest loudly before Ibiki held up one hand for silence. Those of you who believe that you are not ready to take this final question, you may leave without prejudice and will be allowed to take the exam again in the future. Those who choose to stay and get it wrong. From Naruto's position, he could only see a small fraction of Ibiki's gloating smirk, but it was enough to make him shiver. I'm out. One of the older Genin said and Naruto blinked. He recognized him, and he was no Genin. Ibiki had placed several Chunin amongst the Genin, but why? I'm out as well. Another said and if that had been the signal, Genin after Genin declared that they were leaving, often with their teammates snarling at them. Within 5 minutes, only 15 teams remained in the room, one of which was Hinata's team, to Naruto's gratification. Anyone else want to keep their career safe? Ibiki asked and all the Genin simply looked at him. Then, congratulations, you all pass. For a long moment, the silence of shock seemed to echo through the room, then it was broken by Kiba. What? But you never asked the question. I did. Ibiki countered. The decision as to whether you would stay and risk your future or leave to play it safe was the 10th question. Because at times, information is more important than life and on missions and on the battlefield, people risk their lives to get their hands on it. Ibiki reached up and pulled off the bandana he was wearing, revealing that the top of his head was covered in puckered scars and several small holes. Important information in your hands can be a powerful weapon for your comrades and the village. A weapon that you will need to protect, no matter the cost. The ability to be courageous and survive any hardship, those are the abilities needed to become a Chunin. Those who can't put their destinies on the line, those who cling to the uncertain future of, there's always next year, and walk away from their chance, those pieces of trash who can only make such cowardly choices do not deserve to become Chunin. Naruto felt his heart tighten inside him as he considered whether he had the mental fortitude to withstand the torture that Ibiki had obviously undergone in the past. Even as he thought about it, Ibiki replaced his bandana. As it is, you have. He began, only to be interrupted by a window exploding inwards. The projectile that had smashed through the glass pane blurred and resolved into a woman wearing mesh armor, a miniskirt, sandals, and a trench coat while the darkness that had surrounded her was revealed to be a banner that she had used to shield herself from the glass fragments before throwing it so that the kunai at the top corners dug into the ceiling, spreading the banner. From Naruto's viewpoint, he could just make out the writing on it. The sexy and single proctor of the second exam. Mitarashi Anko. Listen up, scrubs. She shouted, her eyes flicking over the remaining Genin. You've had it easy until now, but now is where the fun really starts. This is where you start shedding blood and running the risk of death. You're early, Anko. Ibiki remarked as he stepped round the banner and Anko deflated slightly. Yeah. She grumbled. I could see you were trying to find something else to say, so I decided to help you out and, wow. Only 15 teams? Not bad. A few more and the second stage would have been made redundant. Ibiki commented and Anko glared at him. Hey, the ramen brat and I spent ages setting it up and getting the backup plans in place. She groused, then she turned to smirk at the wary Genin. So, you've all passed the first stage, well now you have to survive the second. It's a survival test lasting 5 days, so I hope you can grab your gear and get to training area 44 within the hour. If you're even 1 second late, you're out. What are you still doing here? Move. Naruto twitched, only for Ibiki to somehow shift to behind him without even seeming to move and putting a hand on his shoulder. You'll have to let your girlfriend do this without your help. Ibiki whispered to him. Helping her now would cause her to question her skills for the rest of her life, wondering if her career was advancing only because of you and not anything that she did. Naruto sighed and gave a reluctant nod as Hinata led her team out of the window, an action that several of the other teams promptly imitated. I know, it's just. I owe her so much. I've learned so much from her, reading, writing, chakra control and usage, what love is and the difference between love and a simple crush. It's like she's your better half. Ibiki supplied as Naruto fumbled for an explanation. Then the best you can do for her is to trust her skill and ability. I do. Naruto protested and Ibiki smirked down at him. Not quite. You have some idea of what she is going up against and so you worry that she may not quite be good enough. But what does your heart say? Naruto relaxed. That she'll do awesomely. Then keep that in mind. And if you tell anyone that we had this talk. Ibiki trailed off and Naruto shrank away from the ghoul-like glare before he could prevent it. How did you get so good at that look? I worked alongside a younger Genin named Tenzo for a while. Ibiki admitted. He was naturally gifted at doing what we call the glare. It's still better than mine. Brrrrrrr. Naruto shivered. In that case, I hope that I never have it directed at me. It is rather effective. Ibiki admitted. Now I'd suggest heading over to the monitor room. Your clones will be very useful there. Chapter 27, Observations of a Genin. Naruto looked around curiously at the setup in the basement that he had been escorted to. Welcome to the Genin Tower. A shinobi who looked slightly familiar said in greeting, turning away from one of the many groups of screens to face him. Naruto nodded back, then his gaze traveled past the man and to the screens behind him. Those are from the cameras that Anko-san and I put up. He said in recognition. They are indeed. Anko purred from behind him. Hey, Hayate. Still coughing. Hayate nodded and Anko shrugged. The test starts in half an hour, I gotta be back at the meeting point. Naruto, there's a shielded spot behind the tent with one of your tags in it. I got it. Naruto said after a moment's concentration, then 3 clones popped into existence. Damn, not even a hand sign. Anko admired as the 3 clones moved to surround her. Hayate, Naruto'll take the first shift, you're on supervisor duty. I'll round up volunteers to cover the night portion. Hayate waved one hand as he coughed and Anko vanished in a flash of golden light. So, eyes on the screens and a group ready to deploy if needed. Naruto as even as a dozen more clones popped into being behind him. Okay guys, to the screens and let's see if we can spot Hinata-chan. The clones cheered and almost dived into their seats, earning a raised eyebrow from Hayate. Hinata's nice. Naruto said with a shrug. So, aside from her, what else should we be on the lookout for? Here. Hayate said, passing a clipboard over. Naruto looked at it, then lifted up the first sheet to keep reading. That's a lot of stuff to watch for. He finally said. There she is. One of the clones called and Naruto walked over to get a look at the screen himself. She's looking very determined. He said after a moment of watching Hinata amidst the group of Genin listening to Anko. It's a shame we don't get sound on these. Too expensive. Hayate said after he'd finished coughing. Keep an eye out. Naruto nodded before glaring at the other clones who had taken their eyes off their own screen in order to watch Hinata's image. The clones quickly turned back to their screens. Weird. One of them said after a moment. A snake just squirmed into the forest through gate 37. Hayate straightened up and strode over to the clone who had made the announcement. What? How big? About 3 foot long. The clone offered and Hayate frowned. Stay. Here. Do not dispel. Naruto and the clones watched Hayate almost sprint out of the door and Naruto shook his head. I wonder where he's off to? And why didn't he ask for a jump? Several clones shrugged before returning their attention to the screens. Tell him what you told me. Naruto looked round to see Hayate striding into the monitor room followed by a man who looked like an older, scarred version of Shikamaru. A snake entered Area 44 through a small gap just by Gate 37. The clone responded. It was about 3 foot long and darkly colored, I almost didn't see it. The new arrival frowned in thought. I need to speak to Anko. There's a tag behind the tent. Naruto offered, indicating the screen where Genin were filing into the tent with forms in their hands and exiting with a scroll. I can get you there instantly and if I come along as well, return you just as fast. By the way, you look really familiar, but... I'm Shikaku. You know my son, Shikamaru as you were in class together and you've gone up against his team multiple times. By the way, thanks for motivating him, He's actually become the most energetic Nara since the founding of Konoha. Naruto blinked at that. Thanks. No worries. Shikaku shrugged. So, I hear that one of your clones spotted a suspicious snake. Naruto half turned to wave at his clone, who nodded and passed across a tape to a second clone, who in turn took it to a spare video player and inserted it. The screen attached to the player showed static for a moment, then it resolved into the view of a gate. For a long moment, nothing happened, then in the corner of the screen, a small serpent slithered out of the grass and through a tiny hole beside the gate, a hole exactly the right size for the snake to fit through. Worrying. Shikaku admitted as he rewound the tape for a second look. Look. The way that snake moved, it's done this before. It looked round before going through the hole. It's obviously a summons and I only know of 2 snake summoners. I've spoken to Anko and she hasn't summoned a snake all week. Orochimaru. Hayate breathed. He's in Konoha. Shikaku frowned. And he's either up to something inside the Forest of Death or he's going to be. I'll get the other 2. Hayate offered. We're going to need more clones as well. Tell me when. Naruto said. I missed that. Shikaku said, not paying attention to the conversation behind him. The hole is the perfect size to let it through without causing it damage, thus risking it dispelling, or being large enough to be noticeable for anything less than a concerted examination. This has happened before. There's a 3rd snake summoner. Naruto stared at the Jonin. Orochimaru has a spy in Konoha and can communicate with him using their shared summons. Shikaku mused as he watched the video for the 4th time. This means that he's had virtually real-time intelligence on us for years. Only the Kamis know what he's got planned, but it can't be good. The Genin are entering the forest. One of the clones called and Shikaku sighed. Too late to call them back. Shikaku sighed. At least, not without severely damaging Konoha's reputation in the eyes of the other villages. I'll pull together some Jonin ready to deploy and I'll see if I can get Jiraiya on board. If we're going to encounter Orochimaru, we'll probably need a son-in of our own. So, my old teammate has returned. Jiraiya said, looking at his saucer of sake, but seeing something that no one else could. He's planning something. Something big, dramatic, complicated and in which he takes a pivotal role. He always had a thing for dramatics. He did. Sarutobi Hiruzen agreed, his gaze equally unfocused. He was my greatest student, and my greatest failure. Both men shared a long silence, then Jiraiya nodded as he looked up at Shikaku. Where do you need me? In the central tower of Area 44. Shikaku stated. Between the guard platoon, Naruto, and his clones and the tags we've got at all the cameras, we can get a fast reaction team to wherever we need it within minutes or even seconds. Orochimaru does tend to spend quite a bit of time posing before moving in on his targets, if he thinks he has the time. Jiraiya agreed. I heard from my sources that he's become more prone to it since he went Nukenin, damn it. I really should have pushed Naruto to sign that scroll. Wait until after the stage finishes and then do it in secret. Hiruzen advised. I'll even let you use the Hokage's field for it. Jiraiya whistled. Really? Okay. You have a deal. Hiruzen raised his sake dish in agreement, then both men sipped appreciatively, then Jiraiya put his saucer down firmly. Alright, let's move to the tower. Maybe I can spar with my apprentice while I'm waiting. I'm getting rusty and if I'm going to face my old teammate, nothing less than my best will do. Agreed. Hiruzen said. Tell Naruto I have one of his father's kunai and expect to be brought in as well should Orochimaru show himself. Sure thing, sensei. Jiraiya agreed. Okay, let's go. Hiruzen watched his last, loyal pupil leave the room, then refilled his sake dish. Where did I go wrong with the other 2? He whispered to himself. Hey, brat. Jiraiya laughed as he entered the room, then he paused. Whoa, lotta brats. Hey, pervy sage. Naruto replied, looking up from the desk where he was working through several sheets of paperwork. Good to have you on the team. I assume that you're taking charge. Well as being a sage, I am a Jonin, so I do have seniority. Jiraiya demurred. In this case, though, I'll follow Hayate as he's the Jonin on site. Like Kurenai was in Wave, even after Asuma and his team joined us. Naruto realized. Technically, Asuma was senior, having been a Jonin for longer, but since Kurenai was the one who took on the mission, she remained in charge. You got it. Jiraiya agreed. I may be a sage and a Sunin, but officially, I'm still just Jonin. Sunin isn't actually a rank, so that means that Hayate is in charge. Naruto glanced at Hayate, who had a deer caught in the lantern light look. Is Hokage a rank? Jiraiya frowned in thought. Technically, not. He finally said. Hokage is more of a permanent mission position with the rank as a, well, no one really cares about the Hokage's rank, although all so far have been Jonin. So I could technically become Hokage as a Genin. Naruto snorted and Jiraiya nodded. That's right, but I can't think of a single hidden village that would promote a Genin to the position of Kage. Come to think of it, I can't think of a single Kage who was a Genin. Damn, guess I need to get promoted in order to reach my goal. Naruto mock-mourned. So, Chunin by 16, Jonin by 20 and Hokage by 24. Now that I think about it, I believe that Yagura, the former Mizukage, was a Chunin. Jiraiya offered. Since he plunged his country into a civil war, that's not a good precedent. Naruto countered and both Hayate and Jiraiya nodded in agreement. Boss. One of the clones called. The Suna siblings are facing off against a team from Rain. Jiraiya, Hayate, and Naruto quickly moved to watch the confrontation. Umbrellas, area effect Senbon Rain attacks. Jiraiya noted. And, there. There it is. He used a sand shield. Naruto noted. Blocked all the Senbon. He shouldn't have been able to do that. Jiraiya mused. Why? Hayate asked. No Byakugan and some of the attack curved in to hit him from behind, but at the same time, the shield isn't all-encompassing. It blocked everything, but it only blocked where it was needed. That level of control and awareness shouldn't be possible for a Genin, especially one of his age. He's either a natural genius or, oh fuck. Everyone looked at him in surprise. Sand. Suna. I heard that they'd removed the one tail from the kettle it was in, but I thought they'd sealed it into a Jonin. They didn't. Him. Naruto asked and Jiraiya nodded. It fits all the facts. He's a Jinchuriki and, oh hell. He didn't show any mercy. Naruto gasped and Jiraiya winced. That level of bloodlust he showed and the look of pleasure on his face afterwards. I've got to find a way to look at the seal. Suna doesn't have any true seal masters in their ranks. Unlike my father. Naruto agreed. I'm still working my through the basic stuff. And they've got Koff the scroll. Hayate noted as the Suna trio exited the glade, leaving behind 3 piles of mangled remains that had once been shinobi. A moment later, a familiar head appeared from behind one of the bushes. That's Hinata. Naruto gasped. She must have seen the whole thing. Boss. Over here. Naruto sup round just in time to see Sakura hurled into the air by a blast of wind, just missing Tobio's attempt to grab her. A moment later, a Kunoichi stepped out from behind a tree and Jiraiya gasped. That's Orochimaru. He always does that with his hands when he's about to implement a plan. He's after Sasuke. Naruto realized. Oh fuck. He's after the Sharingan. Chapter 28, Battles in the Forest. Okay, so what's our plan? Tobio asked as they dashed into the forest. We need to find another team and defeat them. Sakura mused. You two will have to do the majority of the fighting. If we can take down one team member, I can heal you up without worrying as much about being attacked myself. Useful, having an Irionin on the team. Tobio agreed. I was using my Sharingan to try and spot which gate tokens people received. Sasuke supplied. If we arc left, we'll be able to take on one of the waterfall teams. Takigakure's a smaller village. Tobio mused. That means they'll have sent either their best or their politically connected, relatives of their elders. I watched them during the first exam. Sasuke replied as they took to the branches. Their equipment was brand new and they kept shifting it, like they weren't used to it. Politically connected. Tobio concluded. Sounds like it. Sakura agreed. Viable targets. Sasuke stated and both his teammates nodded. I also caught a glimpse of their scroll before they put it away. They have a heaven scroll. Tobio's face turned almost predatory. We get their scroll, then we go straight to the tower. Sasuke continued. Sounds like a plan. Sakura agreed. There they are. Sasuke grumbled. Idiots. Barely paying attention to their surroundings. Boys playing at being shinobi. Well, they've never had to go up against Naruto when he was feeling inventive. Tobio grumbled. They're heading towards the tower, but fast enough that setting a trap will be problematic. We could always use a distraction. Sasuke looked at his teammates, who were both staring at him. What are you looking at me for? Oh no. No. No no no. No. No way. Twice is enough. Sakura looked at him, her eyes widening as moisture started to collect around the edges. Fuck. Sasuke cursed, slumping. Fine. But you two owe me for this. We're teammates. Tobio chirped as they leapt off the branch to get ahead of their targets. Remember what Sensei said? There are no true debts between teammates. Sasuke activated his Sharingan to glare at Tobio, who simply grinned goofily at him. I hate you both. Sasuke growled. I really want you both to know that. We love you too, Sasuke-chan. Sakura giggled and Sasuke growled. There's a stream up ahead, that'll be the perfect place for the ambush. What are you planning? Sasuke asked, his voice a mixture of confusion and suspicion. Well, it'll help us to clean up. I hate you. I can't believe you made me do that. Sasuke grumped as he used an unsealed towel to dry off his hair. And even worse, it worked. Not fair. One of the captured genin grumbled. We thought you were a kunoichi who was washing herself, not a transvestite who doesn't actually need clothes. Sasuke dropped the towel as he glared at the speaker. What was that? Easy. Sakura said as she put her hand on Sasuke's shoulder. They're just sore about losing to us. I mean, they were so busy drooling, they forgot to check what was behind them. Nah, we were checking out your alter egos behind. One of the other ninjas snarked before Sasuke struck him across the back of his head, knocking him out. The other two joined him in unconsciousness and Sakura began riffling through their pockets. Take everything. Sasuke commanded as he began to strip the second one. Leave only their underwear and a kunai each, it should let them get out of the forest. You're letting them live. Sakura smiled and Sasuke grinned fearfully. Yes. Humiliated. Totally. Damn, that's cold. Tobio whispered. I like it. Boys. Sakura mourned, although her lips twitched with amusement. So, once we've done this, straight to the tower. Sasuke and Tobio both nodded. Wait a moment. Sakura said as she ran straight up a tree. A moment later, she ran back down, stopping at the lowest branch. I spotted it, it's that way. Then let's go. Sasuke replied as he ran up the tree to join her, Tobio hot on his heels. The sooner we finish, the better. Yeah, let's not take any risks we don't have to. Tobio agreed. Sasuke briefly activated his Sharingan, then retreated back into the shelter of the canopy. No sign of any enemies at the moment. He whispered, nodding to the glade spread out before them. So, dash across or try to work our way around the edge. Stream to the left, large rocks to the right. Sakura said quietly after taking a look for herself. Rocks are good place for ambush and the noise of the stream will help hide anyone going for stealth. I vote dash. Tobio offered. Head straight across, get into the trees and go straight for the tower. Dash. Sakura agreed and Sasuke nodded. Sakura, you're still the weakest in combat. Tobio, you take the left as you're left-handed. I'll take the right. Sakura, you lead. Just don't stare at my butt. Sakura joked before she dropped to the ground. Pink ready. Black 1 ready. Sasuke confirmed, dropping into position on her right. Black 2, ready. Tobio stated as he took a similar position on her left. 3. Sakura whispered just loudly enough that the two boys could hear her. 2. 1. Go. All three catapulted themselves out of the undergrowth and raced across the grassy glade in perfect formation, then a figure suddenly appeared in front of them. Kuku, well, what do we have here? Oh shit. Sakura whispered as a kunai seemed to materialize in her hand. You're no genin, you've got too much chakra. A sensor. The figure asked, stalking to the edge of the shadows to reveal that she was a kunoichi wearing a grass headband. Interesting. And I see you've learned to activate those delightful eyes of yours, Sasuke-kun, but since I can't have your friends interfering. Brace. Sasuke yelled as the kunoichi unleashed a massive blast of wind. The sudden gale threatened to pull him into the air, but he used his tree-walking skills to anchor himself, as did Tobio and... No. Sakura flew into the air, loose stones adhering to her feet, and Tobio's desperate lunge missed her frantic grasp by a senbon's width. Sakura! Tobio shouted as she vanished over the tree line. Well, that's one down. The kunoichi smirked as she stepped fully out of the shadows and started to prowl around the two genin, eyeing them closely. You don't have a chance, you know. You may as well surrender, I promise I wouldn't simply kill you if you do. Orochimaru. The kunoichi leapt backwards as Jiraiya slammed down, cratering the ground. That's Orochimaru? I thought he was a boy. It's his spirit, but not his body. Sasuke blinked as the dust settled to reveal Jiraiya straightening up, an elderly toad perched on each shoulder. Jiraiya. Sage mode already, just to deal with little old me. Orochimaru smirked, then she paused and raised a hand to her face, which was partially ripped off to reveal pale flesh underneath. Oh, it looks like my disguise isn't necessary anymore. Orochimaru peeled off the torn outer face and smirked. That was a good entrance by the Waoa. Only a frantic rolling dive allowed Orochimaru to dodge the metal-capped black pillar which slammed down exactly where he had been standing, then the pillar shrunk down into a staff, lowering Hiruzen to the ground as it did so. Hello, my old student. Heh, both of you together. Orochimaru smirked as he slowly backed away from the two. But how did you get here so fast? It was almost like Hiration. Jiraiya half-crouched while Hiruzen prepared to attack, then Orochimaru laughed. Well, I can see that this part of my plan needs a bit of a rethink. Until next time, sensei. As the staff lanced out to pierce Orochimaru's heart, his body seemed to collapse into a pile of mud. He's gone. Jiraiya growled. I caught an echo heading southeast, but by now, he's probably near the walls. He won't be back until he figures out what went wrong for him. Then we'll be ready. Hiruzen agreed. Naruto, bring us back. Under the shocked eyes of the two genin, 3 Narutos appeared in a flash of golden light. Hey, Teme. Naruto waved, then he frowned. Where's Sakura? She was blown that way. Tobio said, pointing. We need to find her. Dope. Sasuke nodded. See you round. Hokage-sama, thank you. Go find Sakura. Hiruzen advised as Naruto created 3 more clones. I look forwards to seeing you in the tower. Hi, Hokage-sama. Sasuke managed, then he turned and sprinted off towards where Sakura had been blasted. Behind him, 2 flashes of light marked the departure of his saviors. Eeyowww. Sakura groaned as she pulled herself out of the steaming pile of entrails and scales that had been a giant snake until she had used her chakra scalpels on it from within its gullet. This is so damn gross. Sakura. Tobio shouted as he landed beside her, then he backpedaled rapidly. I know. Thanks to this damn handbag swallowing me, I reek. Sakura grumbled as she tried to wipe some of the blood and other, less identifiable fluid off her skin and clothes. Grah. Even my storage scroll's ruined. There's a stream just over there where you can wash. Sasuke said as he landed, then backstepped slightly. I have several spare changes of clothes, you can have one. Hey, does that mean she's finally going to get into your pants? Tobio snickered just before Sasuke dope slapped him. Ow. Erg. Sakura whined. I need to wash now. My clothes are starting to dissolve. Let's move. Sasuke said. This way. Tobio and I'll keep guard. Thanks. Sakura said gratefully as she followed the two boys. The sooner I get this stuff off my skin, the better. Ew, it's so slimy. Thanks, Sasuke. Sakura said in relief as she finished toweling her hair dry. Tobio glanced at her, his eyebrows rising. You look different. He said, and Sakura looked down at herself. Her sandals were a pair of Tobio's and were still slightly too big for her, while the shorts and t-shirt were Sasuke's, although he had refrained from giving her one of his jackets as, due to the clan symbol on the back, it would be an official offer of marriage or adoption. Instead, she wore one of Tobio's spare shirts, the buttons undone as she wore it jacket style. We should get moving. Sasuke said after a long moment. With any luck, we can get to the tower without anything else happening to us. Agreed. Sakura said with a slight shiver as she stared at her Hitai-8 with the ruined fabric band. After a moment, she pushed it into her pouch and gave a firm nod. The sooner we get to the tower, the sooner I can ask Naruto to take a message to my parents for new clothes. Let's go. Still find it amazing she killed a giant snake. Tobio whispered and Sasuke nodded, his gaze measuring as he looked at Sakura. The door opened and Sasuke slipped through, kunai ready to attack or block and his Sharingan blazing. After a few seconds, he relaxed and his eyes returned to their normal black. Clear. The door opened wider, allowing Tobio and Sakura to enter, then Tobio closed it behind them. So, now what? He asked as Sakura looked round, then her gaze was arrested by the large framed poem mounted on the wall in front of them. If qualities of heaven are your desire, acquire wisdom to take your mind higher. If earthly qualities are what you lack, train your body and prepare to attack. When heaven and earth are opened together, the perilous path will become righteous forever. This something is the secret way that guides us from this place today. You read that very well, Sakura, Tobio said, but what the heck does it mean? It's a metaphor. Sakura explained. Heaven is mind, earth is body. If you're strong but unskilled, study. If you're skilled but weak, train. And you need to open both scrolls to advance. Sasuke realized, pulling them out of his inner jacket pocket. Open them together, open them so that heaven crosses the earth. Tobio. Tobio caught the throne scroll and Sasuke knelt down. Do as I do. Sasuke broke the wax seal on the scroll and pushed it to unroll away from him. The scroll extended, then Tobio's scrolls crossed over it and a cloud of smoke formed. As it dissipated, a figure appeared. That was fast. Kakashi said, looking up from his book. New wardrobe, Sakura. Chapter 29, A Genin's Reunion. Naruto. Sasuke said as he sat down opposite Naruto. Naruto looked up from his bowl of ramen to give the new arrival a nod. Sakura will want a favor from you soon. Naruto sucked up the noodles and swallowed before answering. What sort of favor? Resupply from her house. Sasuke shrugged. I'm sure that you remember that incident in the forest. Ruined her clothes, had to lend her some of mine. She wants to send a note to her parents asking them to pull a couple of outfits from her wardrobe. Sounds doable. Naruto replied. I'll have to charge, though. Say, half a low D rank? Can't afford to be taken for granted, heh. Literally. I'm going to ask to hire you as well. Sasuke said, earning a surprised look. I heard about Wave and I've met Inari. I approve of him, but that's neither here nor there. I need to hire his grandfather to build a house for me. With Orochimaru after me, I need somewhere relatively safe, and even though half of the Uchiha sector is rented out, I don't think I'm going to feel safe there anymore. Understandable. Naruto nodded. Cost. As the last Uchiha, I inherited everything, so I can afford it. There's a former police station near Training Ground 7 that was abandoned as surplus to requirements a decade ago. If that gets torn down, It'll be a good place to build the new house. Accommodations for the whole team, even though I think only Tobio'll join me there. Although Kakashi-sensei might, especially with Orochimaru after me. Tobio is an orphan as well. Naruto agreed. Alright. Get Sakura to write that note and you write yours, I'll deliver them both and get Tajuna over to talk plans with you. Thanks. Sasuke said as he rose from his seat. Oh, Naruto? Prepare for impact. Naruto put down his bowl and gave Sasuke a confused look before Hinata glomped him straight off the chair. Hey, Hinata. Naruto smiled as Sasuke walked off snickering. I see you made it. Hell, yeah. Kiba called as he stepped up and grinned at the grounded duo. It was all thanks to all that training we did against you. It let us spot the trap and dodge it, taking the attackers from the side. Hinata took down 2 of them while Akamaru and me distracted M. That's good to hear. Naruto smiled as he stood up, pulling Hinata into another hug once he was back on his feet. I assume Shino took the 3rd one down. Shino stepped forwards and nodded. Well, there's another 3 days until the test ends, so I'm afraid you have to stay in the tower until then. However, I can show you where the training cells are, if you think you need to get some practice in. Cool. Kiba grinned. Being cooped up for too long tends to drive us Inuzuka slightly nuts. Wait. Naruto said. I've seen where you live, that's a small place, right? With a fairly big window. Kiba protested. And the den is just that, a den. It's for sleeping and storing stuff. Oh, washing and the occasional meal as well, but mainly sleeping and storing stuff. Hence the shower. Naruto nodded. Inuzukas hate baths, just like their ninkin. Hinata giggled. Yep, and it's working out cheaper for me too. Kiba continued, ignoring Hinata's comment. I mean, now I'm independent, I only really have to pay for the utilities, the basic clan tithe and whatever food I claim from the commissary. Aside from those, every ryo I earn is mine. So, are you going to save up for a larger place? Naruto asked and Kiba shrugged. Maybe so, maybe no. I'm putting half my income into an account to earn extra cash from interest. Better safe than sorry in all that sides, when I hit Genin, I'll be able to go on the higher ranked missions and get even more money. The capability to increase one's income should not be abandoned without preliminary consideration. Shino offered. After all, an increase of finance allows for an expansion of the hive. Yeah. Kiba finally agreed. I mean, I'm happy with my den and all, but paying someone to do my laundry will give me a few more hours training time. Training time is always good. Naruto agreed. I use clones for mine, but I have so much chakra that a Kage Bunshin to me takes less proportional effort than a Bunshin does to a normal Genin. That is a lot of chakra. Shino remarked, sounding slightly shaken. Thank the Kamis for Hinata Hime, or I'd still be struggling to get something resembling control. She's awesome. Compared to her, I'm an idiot. Kiba's eyes widened, then he fell over laughing as Hinata stopped and blushed. Kiba, perhaps we should leave them alone so that she can follow through on her threat. Hinata's blush went almost flowers scent as Kiba struggled to breath. Naruto. She growled in fond exasperation. What? Fuck. Shimaru swore as the tower door slammed shut, the final arrow that Dori had fired penetrating it, but not passing through. Should we try to pursue? Gura asked and Shimura shook his head. No. They made it into the tower and if we go in without 2 scrolls, we'll be ejected from the exams. We have no choice. We need to find another team and take them down. Made it. Suijutsu gasped as he slammed the door closed behind him, then ducking as an arrow penetrated the wood by his head. Several voices could be heard cursing, then they faded away as the pursuers left in order to find new prey. Zabuza-sensei won't be mad at us. Kojuro agreed. But damn, those archers were evil. Thank the Kamis for your ice mirrors and Suijutsu's hydrification ability. My mirrors do make good shields. Haku agreed, looking round. Aha, that poem must be a clue as to what to do next. What poem? Suijutsu asked, then he looked up at the large, framed calligraphy poster. Oh. That poem. What does it mean? That you need to study more? Haku snarked and Suijutsu glared at him. No, seriously. Once you decode the metaphor, it says those who are strong but untrained need to study while those who are weak but skilled need to get stronger. Zabuza-sensei's been forcing me to work on that. Kojuro noted. That's only the first half, though. Haku continued. If I've got the second part right, we need to unroll the scrolls now. After all the fuss we went through to keep them both safe. Suijutsu queried and Haku nodded. They seem to be standard 12-foot scrolls and we need to unroll them so that the heaven scroll goes over the earth scroll. Suijutsu, stay there and prepare your scroll. Kojuro. Already on it. Kojuro said as he positioned himself. Ready. Suijutsu, unroll the scroll. Haku commanded and Suijutsu sent the scroll rolling away from him, the previously concealed parchment revealing the squiggles and runes of a few injutsu array. Without the need for prompting, Kojuro sent his scroll rolling to cross over Suijutsu's and the scrolls glowed before a cloud of chakra smoke formed above the intersection. Nicely done, brats. Zabuza said as he stepped out of the cloud. You have 2 days until the test ends, so find yourself a room, then join me in the mess hall. I'll debrief you as we eat. Hi, Zabuza-sama. Haku. Zabuza began grumpily, then he sighed. Just, get moving. Uchiha Sasuke. Sasuke looked up to see a gray-haired stockily built man standing at the end of the table he had claimed. Master Builder Tajuna, I assume. That's me. Tajuna smiled. Naruto said you had some business for me. Sasuke nodded, then turned to the other man sitting at the table. Umino-san, this is Tajuna, whom I hope to hire. Tajuna, be known to my former academy sensei and legal guardian Umino Iruka, the man who is in charge of my finances until I either reach Chunin or the age of 16. Pleased to meet you. Tajuna nodded as he sat down. So, Sasuke, you said you were hoping for a new house. I am. Sasuke said. Hang on. Standing up, Sasuke turned and bent down to pick up the folder he had stashed by his chair. What's that thing on your back? Tajuna asked as Sasuke placed the folder on the table. The Uchiha fan, the symbol of my clan, although I'm all that's left of it. Sasuke said. Why? Just a thought. Tajuna said, pulling out his notebook and making a couple of sketches. So, you want a house and quickly, it's the foundations that take the longest, but since this is a ninja village, you could ask some of them to ninja the foundations for the house, what? To ninja the foundations. Iruka repeated as if he was struggling not to wince. Sasuke smirked, then paused as a person he had read about entered, followed by 3 others. Isn't that Zabuza? He asked and Iruka glanced across the mess hall. Woo, time for. Holy shit. Zabuza. Kiba's voice echoed through the hall as he bounced through the door before coming to a screeching halt as the swordsman turned to see who had spoken. Hey, aren't you one of those brats from Wave? Kiba stared at the swordsman, then found himself moved aside by Hinata. Naruto-kun. I'm back. Hinata seemed to blur across the room and into Naruto's arms as Zabuza started chuckling. I don't think she even saw me. I did. Hinata said from Naruto's hug. But my snuggly is more important. Snuggly. Naruto repeated in amused disbelief as Zabuza started to laugh. Naruto's here. So, should we start screaming like little girls now? Suijutsu asked and Haku face-palmed. I'm done. Sakura called as she opened the door to the bunk room she was sharing with her 2 teammates. Tobio straightened up from his slouch against the wall as he saw her. Looking good. He said, his eyes examining her. Fully stocked. Weapons and medical gear. Sakura confirmed, letting her hand brush over one of her kunai pouches, then she turned enough that he could see the pair of scrolls stored against the small of her back. You realize we won't need them until tomorrow? Tobio asked as he moved to walk alongside her as she headed down to the mess hall. Better safe than sorry. Sakura shrugged. So, who's made it so far? Us, obviously. Tobio snarked, earning a look from Sakura. Teammate, the Sand siblings from Suna, Alliteration. Team Sword from Mist, the team from Sound came in last night, Team Guy came in just an hour ago. That explains the shouts of youth I heard earlier. Sakura deadpanned and Tobio managed not to burst out laughing. Anyone else? Not yet. Tobio shrugged. Of course, if what I heard from Naruto is true, we'll be having some fights to winnow things down further. Sakura sighed. I think I need to do some more training. I'll join you. Tobio replied. Those sword users looked scary. Tomorrow, the second stage ends. Hinata sighed as she snuggled up to Naruto, her gaze on the sunset. I wonder who I'll be matched against. Officially, it's random. Naruto said with a small shrug. I asked Ibiki-san about it and he pointed out that should any Jonin-sensei express any doubts about the process, the backup plan is for the names to be written on bits of paper which are put into small metal spheres, which in turn are placed in a large container and shaken up for 15 minutes before being emptied onto a pair of metal rails, and the Jonin who complained selects which end to start from. Sounds complex. Hinata smiled and Naruto nodded. Yep, it's meant to be so that the Jonin-senseis only complain if the manipulation of the names is more than minor. Unfortunately, that means that you're likely to be facing your cousin. Hinata blinked. What? The finals are meant to showcase the village's skills to potential clients, and as many of those skills as possible. Naruto explained. Having two Hyuga would cut down on the variety on display. Hinata sighed as she slumped in Naruto's arms. Then Neji-san should represent Konoha. She stated. He's better than me in Gyuken. But you have the Hiraishin and the Rasengan. Naruto protested, only for Hinata to place a finger on his lips. Those are your techniques. She said quietly. For me to be promoted because I know your techniques while you can't be promoted through the exams like you deserve. Naruto gave her a long look and she sighed. All right. If it's anyone other than Neji, I'll fight. All right. Naruto nodded and Hinata turned her gaze back to where the sun was sinking below the horizon. As they sat in each other's arms, neither of them noticed the red-eyed woman fading away, having overheard their entire conversation, nor the white-eyed boy on the balcony above who was staring at the sky in confused contemplation. Chapter 30, A Genin Observer. Naruto stood to one side of the dais, looking over the assembled genin stood in neat ranks in the main sparring hall. On either side of the platform, the Jonin senseis stood, 2 Konoha and 1 non-Konoha on the left while the other 4, 2 and 2, stood on the right. The 21 genin stood in 3 rows of 7, each team standing in line behind their senior genin, waiting for the final part of the second stage to begin, and Naruto almost jumped out of his skin as a hand dropped onto his shoulder. Anko. Hey, brat. Anko smirked. You did good out there. You got the squads in place. Naruto nodded, then paused as the Oto Jonin gave him a measuring look. Squads. Orochimaru tried something in the forest. Anko shrugged. Naruto Kunhir helped set up the counter-attack that drove him off. Congratulations, Chunin. The Jonin smiled. My name is Reishi and it's an honor to meet the son of the Yellow Flash. I'm only a genin. Naruto demurred, then he frowned. Damn, word's spread that far, has it? Reishi nodded, then turned his attention to the other side of the stage where Hiruzen was talking to Ibiki. I've got a job to do. Anko stated. And? So do you, remember? Got it. Naruto sighed as he summoned 2 clones. Be back soon. The world seemed to blink around him, then he was standing in front of Jiraiya. Hey, brat. Pervy Sage. Naruto nodded back, then he turned to look at the screens. Any sign of Orochimaru? No. Jiraiya growled as he watched the screen on which Hiruzen was giving his speech, then the ones showing Jonin senseis. And that worries me. When he did apply himself to it, he was a very convincing actor, and now he knows that we can be on top of him within seconds of finding out just who he's masquerading as. One of the Jonins. Naruto asked. Reishi, Bake, or Zabuza? I've met Zabuza before, so. Too obvious. Jiraiya countered. More likely he's pretending to be one of the Umbu. There should be a dozen of them around, hidden from view. There's probably 13 Umbu in there, but since they're under orders to conceal themselves unless summoned or something happens that requires intervention, damn. For a long moment, Jiraiya stared at the screens, then he shrugged. Alright. Leave another dozen clones, then head back. Looks like Sensei is finishing his speech and you're going to want to watch your girlfriend do her stuff. Naruto paused mid-technique to glare at the snickering sage, then a dozen clones popped into existence around him before he rejoined the 2 clones that had allowed him to make the Hiraishin jump. Good luck finding that bastard, he said before he vanished in a flash of golden light. Yeah, luck's the only way I will find him. Jiraiya sighed as he turned back to the screen where all bar 2 of the Genin were making their way to the viewing balcony. Movement caught his eye and he grinned as Naruto shunshined to beside Hinata, who responded by taking his arm and wrapping it around her as they watched the duo squaring off. What did I miss, other than the speech? Naruto whispered as he gave Hinata a one-armed hug. Kabuto quit, saying he hadn't recovered enough from the forest. Hinata replied just as quietly, but with a frown. I checked, he didn't have any obvious injuries and his chakra levels seemed to be quite high, almost to the level of a Jonin. Interesting. Naruto mused. I'll tell Jiji afterwards, something like that is, they're starting. Below them, Sakura finished adjusting her gloves while the white-haired teen opposite her unslung his sword. The front of the blade was narrow but widened into a cylindrical center while the trailing edge seemed to be covered in tags. That's the Shivuki or blast sword. Naruto gasped. I remember Kosuke-senpai telling me about the swords of the mist. It deploys exploding tags from the back. Hinata inhaled sharply as the teen below spoke. Are you a boy or a girl? I mean, you're so flat-chested, it's hard to tell. Bad move. Naruto whispered as Sakura seemed almost to glow with fury. Not that it really matters, although I have to say, that's a huge forehead you have. Begin. Hayate commanded as Sakura seemed to be surrounded with incorporeal flames for an instant. He tried to trash-talk Sakura, what an idiot. Naruto whispered as the kunoichi below exploded into action even as Suijutsu attacked. Suijutsu swung his sword, only for Sakura to deliver an uppercut to the side of the blade that sent the blade flying into the air, embedding itself into one of the rafters. The fuck? Suijutsu managed before a second punch sent him slamming into the wall where he exploded in a shower of water, his hip cord clattering to the ground. Huh. The water flowed together and reformed into a scowling Suijutsu. Ignoring the shocked looks, he picked up his gourd, opened it and drank deeply before glaring at the wide-eyed Sakura. That hurt. He growled. And I'll make sure you hurt even more. Sakura growled as she pulled out a kunai. No one makes fun of my forehead. Shan-naro. Damn, she's good. Naruto noted as Suijutsu frantically threw himself backwards to avoid the blade that threatened his crotch. She fights dirty, too. I blame you for that. Kakashi noted from behind them, causing them both to jolt in shock. After that wake-up call you gave me at the bell test, I took a long look at myself and what I had allowed myself to become. I also considered how to train my genin better. Sakura studies for 2 evenings a week with Anko. It was expensive, but I think it was worth letting Anko see underneath my mask. No wonder she's been looking smugger than usual for the last few months. Kurenai groaned as below them, Sakura threw a trio of kunai that impaled Suijutsu's arm briefly before he turned it into liquid just long enough to let the kunai drop to the ground. Interesting. Kakashi mused. I haven't seen any wielders of the Hozuki bloodline in years, although I did hear that one was in the previous iteration of the 7 Swordsmen of the Mist. I wonder if... A crackling noise interrupted his musing and Kakashi glanced below, noting the sprawled form. Well, looks like she found out how to use that nerve stimulation jutsu in combat. Clever girl. Down below, Sakura kicked the jelly-like form of Suijutsu, causing ripples to travel over his entire body. My forehead is not that big. Winner, Sakura. Hayate stated. Medics. The white-suited medic nins bustled in, then paused as they tried to figure out how to lift Suijutsu onto the stretcher. Haku. Zabuza commanded and Haku vaulted over the railing to land by his teammate, his hands already blurring through a string of seals. A moment later, the spilled water around Suijutsu froze and shifted, turning into a stretcher made out of ice. It will last for about 5 minutes. Haku explained as the medics picked up Sujetsu. Thanks. The head medic said, then he followed the others back into the medical bay adjacent to the sparring chamber. Turning, Haku paused, then leapt first to the balcony and then to the wall. Running up to the embedded sword, he grabbed it in a reverse grip, then pulled it out and dropped back down to land beside Zabuza, who took the sword from him as if it was a regular occurrence. Next match is Kof and Yuzuka Kiba against Abu Mizuku. Yes. Kiba exulted from beside them. A chance to show how good we are. Let's get him, Akamaru. He seems more excitable than normal. Naruto chuckled as Kiba vaulted over the railing, dropping to the ground with practice's ease while his opponent walked down the stairs. Interesting shirt. Naruto muttered and Hinata took a closer look at Zuko's outfit, noting the 3 red kanji for death printed on his beige top. Are you Kof already? Hayate asked and Kiba nodded enthusiastically while Zuko just smirked. Yep, Akamaru and I are ready. Kiba exclaimed. Right, bud. Akamaru barked in agreement. I need a new SCRF, your mangy mutt'll do. Kiba snarled, his hand pulling a small pill out of his pouch. Begin. Kiba tossed the pill straight to Akamaru, who snapped it out of the air, then leapt sideways as something blasted out of Zuko's palm, shattering the stone where Akamaru had been crouched. A second blast clipped Kiba, sending him tumbling. Hinata. The veins around Hinata's eyes bulged briefly. He has devices built into his arms, they seem to react to his chakra, they fire blasts of chakra-infused air, allowing him to adjust it to create blades, blasts, or other techniques. Naruto concluded, looking at the gash in the opposite wall. That is a strong skill. So, you dodged my blasts, but there's more where they came from. Zuko sneered, unleashing a two-handed blast at Kiba, who barely managed to scramble out of its way. Your aim is as lousy as your threats. Kiba taunted and Zuko snarled as he fired alternating blasts at Kiba, then the Otonin suddenly folded over with a high-pitched scream as a red blur impacted just below his waist. Gotcha! Kiba snarled as he delivered a rising spinning kick. As the Soundnin somersaulted backwards from the power of the kick, Akamaru released his grip on Zuko's groin and Kiba snatched him out of the air, redirecting him so that when he landed, Akamaru was perched on his back. Kill you, both. Zuko sobbed as he rolled away from the duo. As if. Kiba scoffed. Shikyaku no Jutsu. Jujin Bunshin. Kiba's nails and teeth seemed to lengthen, his face taking on a more feral cast while wisps of chakra flared around him, then Akamaru vanished into a cloud of smoke, dissipating to reveal a second Kiba. The hell? Zuko frowned as he managed to stagger to his feet, one hand still pressed over his groin. Let's do this. Kiba snarled as Akamaru dropped down beside him. Let's cull the herd. Both figures burst into motion, running in opposite directions and Zuko's eyes widened as he tried to gather enough chakra to fire another blast, then he was sent flying by a double-footed kick from behind, followed by a spinning backhand that halted him in midair. Before he could fall, both Kibas grabbed his ankles and in a well-rehearsed movement, swung him down to slam face first into the ground, then up and over with twice the effort, leaving him face up in a small crater. Ouch. Naruto winced as Hayate ended the match. I hope he never does that to me. Kiba and Akamaru, transformed back into his normal form, jogged up the stairs to rejoin Team 8. Who? We did it. Kiba cheered. We were awesome. Next match is about to start. Naruto pointed out and Kiba turned. Rock Lee and Chuchi-kin. YOSH. Lee shouted as he somersaulted over the railings and landed in a perfect three-point crouch in front of Hayate. At last, I have a chance to show my youthful prowess. Kin shook her head as she descended, the bells at her waist jingling with each step she took. Something odd about those bells. Kiba grumbled, shaking his head. They're infused with her chakra. Hinata noted as she deactivated her Byakugan. Are you ready? Hayate asked, getting 2 nods in reply. Then, begin. Lee blurred straight past Kin, causing her hair to briefly stream in the breeze, then he collided with the wall, embedding himself into the stonework for a moment before he pulled himself out, blinking owlishly. That was a very youthful dodge, he said as he turned round to face Kin, who hadn't moved but was staring at him in disbelief. However, I can be even more youthful. Lee blurred forwards again and Kin ducked, but once more he completely missed her and plowed into the wall. What is going on? Neji muttered, just loudly enough for Naruto to overhear. You can't dodge forever, Lee declared as he started to walk towards Kin, then he staggered sideways. Whoa! Doton techniques now? I will not let you defeat me with these unyouthful tactics. Kin swallowed as she shifted into a defensive pose, Senbon appearing in her hands and the bells at her waist chiming louder. Lee staggered for a moment, then launched himself, passing straight past Kin once more and slamming headfirst into the wall. Kin threw a discolored Senbon at Lee, embedding it in his thigh, and a few seconds later he collapsed. He's knocked out. Kin shrugged. I think I won that. How? Naruto wondered as Kiba stopped rubbing at his ears. That sound stopped. The bells. Hinata gasped. She was using a genjutsu carried on the sound of the bells. She must have been casting it even as she walked down the stairs. Oh hell. Naruto groaned as he looked at the names on the screens above the dais. I was right. Hinata followed his gaze, then her head turned. A few meters away, Neji returned her gaze impassively. Hyuga Hinata and Kof Hyuga Neji, please come down. Chapter 31, A Genin's Support. Hyuga Hinata and Kof Hyuga Neji, please come down. Hayate said and Neji stepped towards the stairs. Proctor, I forfeit. Hinata called and any eye froze. My cousin is more skilled than I am and has served Konoha longer. He deserves the chance to become Chunin. I still need more experience before I can even consider myself to be ready for the extra responsibilities being a Chunin brings. I choose to let Neji progress. Very well. Hayate said after exchanging glances with the Hokage. Hyuga Neji wins by forfeit. The next match has been chosen. Kof would Abaramai Shino and Kankuro of. Hell no. Kankuro shouted. I'm out. No way am I going up against an Aburame. I've read the histories and a normal Aburame Genin can destroy a Chunin puppeteer. I want to keep my puppets intact, thank you very much. Shino stood motionless, yet somehow radiated a sense of aggrieved triumph. 2 forfeits. I hope this doesn't become a pattern. Naruto smiled at Hinata and gave her a reassuring hug. Next time, you'll blast them away. He whispered. Unless either Gaara of the Desert or Akadu Yoroi wish to forfeit. Hayate snarked and both named Genin glanced at each other before descending to the main floor. Gaara has a great deal of chakra surrounding him, like a suit of armor over his skin, more than he had in the first stage. Hinata mused, then she stiffened. That gourd he's carrying is full of chakra, in 2 different colors. 2 colors. Naruto repeated distractedly as he looked round in an attempt to spot where Orochimaru could be hiding. Who has 2 different colors of chakra? You do, like he does. Hinata whispered and Naruto froze. Shit. Jiraiya said that he was that would explain it. Interesting. Kakashi mused. If I remember the histories correctly, the first Hokage handed the tailed beasts to various countries to try and keep the peace. Suna received the one tail, which would make Gaara the Jinchuriki key of the Ichibi. He is probably one of the most dangerous genin in the room. We may need to prepare for a rapid evacuation. Should we try to warn Yoroi? Naruto asked as the 2 genin squared off against each other, then Yoroi lunged forwards. I'll drain you dry of chakra. Yoroi snarled as his hands slammed against Gaara's shoulders. Fascinating. Kakashi said, slightly lifting his headband. Yoroi seems to be draining chakra from Gaara at quite a rate. He'd be able to drain a genin in a matter of seconds and a chunin within half a minute, but Gaara has more chakra than almost anyone else in the room, even me. How fast is he draining him? Naruto asked and Kakashi shook his head. Not fast enough and his coils will overload if he keeps this up. Oh. Gaara smirked, then the cork of his gourd popped out, followed by a cloud of sand which flowed to surround the 2 of them. Not good. Naruto commented as he stood up. Yoroi. He's got too much chakra for you. Get clear. Shut up, I can do this. Yoroi yelled, then he glanced at his hands. Huh? What's with all the sand? With a sudden surge, the sand formed into a rising spike between Yoroi and Gaara, the impact flinging the Konoha Genin backwards, then the spike turned into a wave of sand that engulfed Yoroi, cutting off his yell of shock. Sabaku Q. Gaara intoned, lifting one hand, then he clenched it with a sudden bloodthirsty grin. Sabaku Soso. The pile of sand encasing Yoroi compacted to a quarter of its previous size, sending a fountain of blood and gore arcing halfway to the ceiling. Several of the genin watching began throwing up and Naruto caught Hinata in a comforting embrace. Winner. Gaara. Hayate finally managed. You can go back to your team now. The sand rippled and flowed back into the gourd, pulling the cork back into place as Gaara turned to make his way back to the stairs, uncaring of the smear of blood and liquidized flesh remaining. Hayate motioned and an umbu appeared, unleashing a Sutten jutsu that washed the gore into one of the drains set into the floor at the edges of the hall. Well, the next KOF match is Mamakai Haku and Tobio. Naruto concentrated on hugging Hinata, gently rubbing her back as she shuddered. You don't have to stay. Naruto whispered. Kiba and Shino have both had their fights. I'll be okay. Hinata mumbled. It just came as a shock. I know. Naruto agreed. That boy's a psycho. I wouldn't want to fight him. Heck, as soon as I find out who's going up against him in the finals, I'm going to warn them. They need to know. Begin. Hayate commanded and Naruto shifted slightly to get a view of what was happening. Below, Tobio unleashed a wave of shuriken that curved around to slash at Haku from a dozen different directions, only for them to be blasted away by a wind technique. Damn. Tobio grumbled. I thought futon users were supposed to be rare. Oh well. Sprinting forwards, Tobio slashed with a kunai, only for Haku to counter with a trio of senbon, blocking the strike. For a moment, Tobio strained against the block, then he dropped and kicked at Haku's knee, only to roll back with a yelp of pain as a senbon embedded itself into his thigh. Shit. He hissed, hurling the kunai at Haku, only for Haku to catch it by thrusting a senbon through the pommel ring in a startling display of speed and accuracy. I would advise you to surrender. Haku commented as he flicked his wrist, sending the kunai screaming across the room, embedding itself in the stone tiles less than an inch away from Tobio's groin. Hell, no. Tobio snarled. I'm not giving in that easy herc. Tobio started to reach for the pair of senbon sprouting from his neck, then he collapsed in a boneless heap. Tobio! Sakura screamed as Hayate darted forwards, but Haku was there first, gently extracting the senbon. I placed him in a false death state. Haku explained. He will recover, but I would advise having him rest for a week at the very least. Hayate looked at the approaching medics and the lead medic nodded to show that he had overheard what Haku had said. Winner by knockout, Haku. Hayate confirmed as the medics placed Tobio on a stretcher and carried him to the medical room, one of them already using a healing jutsu on his neck. The next contestants KOF are Uchiha Sasuke and Kinyuta Dosu. Naruto grinned as Saki started down the stairs. Good luck. Teme. He called and Sasuke shook his head. I don't need luck, I've got skill, dope. He shot back before continuing down, leaving Naruto grinning as Hinata looked between the two genin in confusion. Naruto. Meh, he's hired me as a sparring partner a few times to test new moves on. Naruto shrugged. Area effect ones, distance ones, that sort of thing. Being able to pump out Kage Bunshin all day comes in handy. Oh. Heh, and I thought that it was my teaching that led to him improving so much. Kakashi mock sulked, causing Naruto to roll his eyes. Yeah. How many techniques have you let him copy, by the way? Only a few. Kakashi shrugged. I've been working on building up his speed and chakra levels. Knowing 1,000 jutsu doesn't do much good if the other person can do it faster than you, after all. Don't think I didn't see him slip off his weights before heading down. Naruto smirked, nodding to where Sasuke's armbands lay on the ground, along with a second set of bands that had appeared to be part of his sandals. That dude's in for a shock if he thinks Duck Butt will go down easy. He hates that nickname. Kakashi pointed out. Then he should style his hair differently. Naruto shot back. Whoop, they're starting. Below, Doso flipped his right sleeve back to reveal that his arm was encased in a metal contraption studded with holes. My melody gauntlet, he said, his single visible eye narrow. Let's see if your fancy eyes can match this. Drawing a kunai, Doso struck the gauntlet, causing the world to seem to flex and distort for a moment. Naruto grabbed onto the railing as his inner ear rebelled before settling, while below, Sasuke dropped to one knee, his eyes turning red. You're helpless against my techniques. Doso gloated and Sasuke shook his head, then fired a small spray of fireballs at Doso, forcing him to dodge. That's new, Kiba noted. Before Doso could recover, Sasuke blurred forwards, his kunai clashing against the frantically interposed gauntlet, and Sasuke staggered backwards, shaking his head. Ha! The closer you are, the greater the effect. Doso taunted and Sasuke growled, firing another spray of fireballs, but with less precision. Doso responded by throwing a punch which somehow knocked Sasuke back, despite the distance between them being almost 24 feet. How? Naruto asked as Hinata deactivated her Byakugan. He's using his gauntlet to create chakra-enhanced attacks, she said. But, it's not like any futon technique I've ever seen before. Sasuke rolled to one side as Doso swung his fist again, then threw a dozen smoke bombs to engulf the area in shifting eddies of darkness. That won't help. Doso sneered. I can still hear you, Aarg. The smoke seemed to be illuminated from within even as a barrage of incredibly loud cracks and bangs echoed, causing everyone to clutch at their ears. Then Doso was propelled upwards out of the smoke, bent double and with Sasuke launching himself into the air after him. At the top of their arc, Sasuke grabbed Doso's foot and used it to slam his feet into Doso's stomach before pushing off and spinning round to deliver an axe kick to the back of Doso's head. The sound nin fell back into the dissipating smoke, landing with an audible thud, and Sasuke landed lightly next to him, pulling out a kunai and resting it on Doso's neck. Winner, Sasuke, Hayate announced, and Sasuke straightened up, returning the kunai to his pouch before almost strutting up the stairs, a triumphant smirk on his face. Not bad, Teme, Naruto called out. Glad you think so, Dobe. Sasuke shot back as he rejoined his team, picking up his weights and reattaching them to his arms and legs. Could Temari and Tsurugi Misumi please come down? Hayate called, and Naruto's gaze darted to the kunoichi from Suna. What's that on her back? He wondered. I'll look forwards to getting close to you. Misumi sneered, and Temari unslung the weapon that she was carrying. What, you think a club will help? I'm a taijutsu specialist, I can easily get past a weapon that clumsy. No, you won't. Temari stated as she spun the weapon, unfolding it to reveal that it was a giant fan. Going to do a fan dance? Misumi chuckled as Hayate took a step back. Begin. Temari leapt backwards, spinning round to build up momentum, and sent a blast of air at Misumi, picking him up and ramming him headfirst into the wall. The genin slumped to the ground, and for a long moment, no one moved. Winner. Temari, Hayate finally said, and Kiba groaned. Man, that has to have been the lamest fight ever. That dude's a disgrace to Konoha. I've heard of a couple of other one-hit fights. Kakashi supplied as the final two genin started down towards the arena floor. One where someone trash-talked the other and ended up knocked out with a broken jaw, while the other was knocked out by a kick that was meant as a means to buy a couple of seconds to prepare for the expected counter-attack. Still lame. Kiba shrugged, looking down at the two genin. A swordsman versus a weapons mistress. Kakashi mused. This could be interesting. Below them, Kojiro unslung his sword, holding by both handles and letting the bandages wrapped round it drop to the ground, while Tenten reached behind her to unseal a chokyuto from a storage seal inscribed on the back of her belt. Huh, they're both going for Kenjutsu. Kakashi noted. I wonder how skilled she is. Guy is primarily a taijutsu specialist. Which is why I asked the youthful Yojeo to help fan Tenten's flames of youth with the ways of the sword. Guy said from behind Kakashi, startling everyone except the silver-haired Jonin. Then this will be very interesting. Kakashi said as the two genin squared off against each other. Final match. Hayate declared. Begin. Chapter 32, A Genin's Plans. Tenten shifted her feet slightly, sinking into a low stance as her eyes measured up her opponent. His larger sword would allow him to deliver blows too powerful to block, but its size would limit how fast he could swing it, allowing her to intercept and redirect it. The odd two-handle design would aid with slashes and blade twists, but would cut down on precision. Of course, with the sword being one of the famous 7 swords of the mist, precision was probably not that high on the list of required attributes for wielding it. Final match. Hayate declared. Begin. Kojuro sprinted forwards, spinning to build up momentum, and the Hiramekari slashed through the air on a path that would have bisected Tenten, had she not countered with a rising slash that deflected the larger blade just enough to let her roll underneath it, rising to slash at Kojuro's flank. The blade missed as Kojuro used the momentum of his sword to help him leap sideways, opening the distance between them again. Tenten seems to be enjoying this. Naruto commented. She doesn't have much chance to practice her kenjutsu, it's normally shurikenjutsu at the training sessions that I've attended. The clashing of metal versus metal interrupted him as Tenten pressed home the attack while Kojuro shifted his grip, releasing one handle in order to place his hand against the flat of the blade, allowing him to use it like a shield. After several seconds, Tenten disengaged in a whirling flurry of steel that denied him the chance to counter-attack. His blade is full of chakra. Hinata murmured as below them, Kojuro shifted his grip again, then his sword was suddenly surrounded by a chakra aura. What the? Tenten began, but she was interrupted by Kojuro as he swung the Hiramekari. Hiramekari Kaiho. The chakra suddenly extended outwards, tripling the length of the blade, and Tenten launched herself into an aerial somersault to avoid the unexpected slash, barely dodging the chakra blade before landing in a 3-point crouch. Right. She growled, then she paused as something hit the ground beside her. All eyes moved to look at the shredded ribbon, then Tenten slowly reached up to touch the ragged ends that had once been her left hair bob. You, bastard! She shouted, stabbing her Chokyuto into the ground and somehow filling her hands with multiple kunai and shuriken. Do you have any idea how long it took me to find a hairstyle that let me have long hair without it holding me back? Kojuro didn't answer, being too busy trying to shield himself against the veritable horizontal rainstorm of metal that Tenten was sending his way. I couldn't even wear it loose, because I'd look like Neji. Tenten ranted as her hands blurred. Sure, he's a dish, but I'd rather not look as if I'm his sister. From how he treats his cousin, I know he doesn't have that fetish, so I can't use that to get him into my bed. Neji turned bright red while Hinata sought refuge in Naruto's arms, biting her lip to stop herself laughing. Now I'll need a haircut to get it looking even again. Tenten continued unabated. And if Guy-sensei or Lee even think about suggesting a bowl cut, I'll use my rising dragons on them. Both males in question seemed to shrink back without actually moving. I'm sorry. Kojuro shouted, and the barrage of bladed weapons suddenly stopped. Carefully, he peeked out from behind the shield of his sword, only to get sent flying backwards as a kunai's pommel ring slammed into his forehead. Bastard! Tenten grumped. Winner, Tenten. Hayate confirmed while trying to hide an amused smirk. If the winners could all cough, please come down and form a line. Naruto noted with amusement that the still blushing Neji made certain that he was on the end of the rapidly forming line that was furthest away from his teammate. Naruto. Tenten called up. Once this is done, can I borrow a dozen clones? Naruto bit down on a laugh as Tenten indicated the drifts of metal that would need to be collected, sorted, and resealed. Sure thing. He called back. However, I think Anko-san wants your attention. Tenten jolted back to face front and stared at Anko, before realizing that the elder Kunoichi was holding a box. With a sheepish smile, she reached in and extracted a small ball. Okay, if you can let me see the numbers. Hayate asked, then he scribbled the names of the winners down onto his clipboard before turning it round. In 1 month, you will participate in the final exam, he said, before breaking off to cough. Anko filched his clipboard while he was fumbling for a handkerchief and took over. The first match will be Uchiha Sasuke vs Higurashi Tenten. The second will be Haruno Sakura against Inyazuka Kiba. The third is Temari against Chuchikin, while the fourth will be Hyuga Neji against Yuki Haku. The fifth will be Gara of the Desert against Abu Rameshino. The winner of match 1 will fight the winner of match 2. Same thing for 3 and 4. The winner of match 6 will fight the winner of match 5 with the victor going up against whoever won match 7. Sheets showing the match UPS will be given to your Jonin senseis by the end of the day. Stage 2 is now finished. You will be escorted to the boats and given a ride out of the forest of death unless you have alternate transportation already arranged. Dismissed. I really need to talk to Shino. Naruto mused, then he turned slightly. Kurenai, any word on what happened to the other teams? I haven't heard anything about most of them, but I spoke to Asuma-san just before coming here and he mentioned that his team sought medical attention for Koji on the second day, but they're all fine now. Thank goodness. Naruto sighed, then he frowned. I wonder what happened to them. Ino's getting very good with her trapping skills. You can get the story later. Kurenai shrugged as Shino and Kiba rejoined them. A meal. Naruto suggested. Somewhere where we can talk. All the teams. I think it's probably time they found out. Hinata looked at him, then hugged him as tightly as she could. Interesting. Shino mused. I surmise that the meal will be educational. I know a good restaurant. Kurenai supplied. It's run by a former ninja who knows all about the need for privacy. I'll ask him for one of the back rooms. Thanks. Naruto smiled as teams 7 and 9 moved to join them. Alright, let's find a room to use and I'll whisk everyone to one of the training fields. Which one's the most private? I recommend my team's ground. Guy suggested. The tag is in an area shielded from casual observers. Sounds good. Naruto said, summoning a quintet of clones who ran out of the hall. I'll see if I can get Ino or Shikamaru to meet us there, find out what happened to them. Then what's the 5th clone for? Kurenai asked. I needed to inform Jiji about a certain person. Naruto. Shikamaru yawned as soon as everyone had appeared in the training ground. Shika. Naruto replied. You didn't make it to the tower. What happened? Exploding squirrels, which until then, I thought were just a silly rumor. Shikamaru supplied, causing Tenten, Neji and a still groggy Lee to nod in recognition. We were setting up an ambush ahead of one of the other teams when one triggered the trap early. Koji got hit by several of the Senbon, then the squirrel detonated and knocked him over, landing on Ino's kit. We decided to get help rather than risk the various poisons interacting badly. A wise decision. Guy smiled. The health of your comrades is of paramount importance. How is Koji? Sakura asked and Shikamaru smiled. Almost completely recovered, he'll be out of hospital by the end of the day. Tomorrow? Naruto asked Kurenai, who nodded. Tomorrow? What about tomorrow? Shikamaru queried. Hayashi-sama. Neji bowed and Hayashi looked up from the paperwork that he was perusing. Neji. Hayashi replied. I heard that you have made it into the final exam. You have something on your mind. Have you heard how I qualified? Neji asked and Hayashi cocked an eyebrow. No, only that you did. I admit that I had assumed that it was your prowess in our fighting art that secured your victory, am I mistaken? Neji paused for a long moment. No, but you are not correct, either. The elimination match was between Hinata-san and myself. As I half expected. Hayashi nodded. It is an open secret amongst those who have attained the rank of Jonin that the names chosen are only partially randomized. The match UPS are occasionally adjusted to either eliminate repetition that would cause the audience of the final stage to become bored, or to give a Genin an easier path through if they have a reputation that would lead to Konoha's international standing being reduced should they fail. Since Genin from the other hidden villages are not well known enough to be used in the matches in question, the selections tend to pit the Konoha Genin that should advance against one who is nowhere near strong enough to be allowed to advance. Neji stared at his uncle for a moment, his sense of betrayal obvious, before he managed to get his expression back under control. So, I was to be sacrificed for my cousin to advance. I believe it was meant to be the other way around. Hayashi gently corrected him. My daughter would not use the one move that would have granted her victory, her heart is too gentle for that. As he spoke, Hayashi's hand briefly formed the seal that would let him activate the caged bird seal on Neji's forehead, then he dropped his hand back onto the desk, knowing that Neji had caught his meaning. So, how did you win? Hinata declared that she was not yet skilled and experienced enough to seek the rank of Genin, so she forfeited in order to allow me to continue. Neji replied. My daughter is wiser than she knows. Hayashi mused. Naruto has truly been good for her. Neji cocked his head questioningly as Hayashi refocused on him. What are your feelings on her actions? I do not know. Neji admitted. Finding out that the fight between us was manipulated rather than fated, that I advanced because of her choice, that she thought I would make a better Genin than her. I just don't know. Hayashi nodded approvingly. It is when we admit that we do not know everything that we can truly start to grow. I started learning that after the first few times my team went up against Naruto-sama. Neji admitted. I found that he could use against me everything I didn't know. Hayashi stared at him, then nodded as if he had made a decision. I will train you personally in the full ways of the Gyuken. He declared, causing Neji to stare at him in shock. There are still things you do not know, and not all of them relate to our art. Neji looked at him, then frowned as a new thought occurred. Wait, if the matches are adjusted, how did Uchiha Sasuke end up facing a foreign ninja? Should he not have faced a Konoha shinobi weaker than him? That is a puzzling question. Hayashi allowed. Just here, Lord Hokage. The Technin said, pointing to a small device embedded in the computer. It looks like a one-shot unit, use it once before it burns out, but it lets someone change one of the settings. Interesting. Hiruzen mused, crouching to get a better look. Of course, the question was, who was it aimed at? Did someone want to stop Sasuke from proceeding to the final stage? Did they want the Sound Nin to fail? Did they think the Sound Nin could stop Sasuke, or were they counting on him failing? And who? The Technin added. Oto is the obvious candidate, but... Indeed. Sarutobi said as he straightened up, suppressing a wince as his back twinged. New village with several strong shinobi that no one's ever heard of before, accepting Nukenin into its ranks, an easy choice for a victim to frame if you wish to distract someone. No, they're too obvious, but that leaves only Suna and Mizu, unless it is a plan by someone who believes that they should be the Hokage and are seeking to set up a series of events to discredit me. See if you can find out anything else about that device. The Technin nodded and carefully prized the half-melted piece of technology away from the circuit board that it had been attached to. That's it for part 4. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.